Man, am I tired, but gosh, did I have a really fun time yesterday. So, is it weird that I could say that my low and my high are pretty much the exact same thing? Because what I had to do last night was actually, low, high, and active kind of throw out pretty much the same thing. Because the low part of it was, what I did last night was for a very sad reason. But, my high was, I went to this thing I went to. I'll talk about what it is in a second. And my act of kindness was I had to represent my family. So, straight up, while I was on vacation a couple weeks ago, there was a very important person that my grandfather knew he died. I'll get the call because his name, he's passed on now, so it's pretty much, I don't really think it matters if I say his name or not. His name was Freeman Smith. And he was probably my grandfather's best friend, or one of his very best friends. He really was one of the nicest people, ever. Ever. My grandfather talked about him all the time. Freeman Smith actually owned a cottage a little ways down from my grandfather, and he would let, my mom and my aunts borrow, his sailboat and stuff like that. Just the nicest person ever. And I'll never forget when I was on vacation. My mom was busy watching my nephews earlier that day. So she receives a call. And then we were saying 3 minutes died. Then she called me. And I'm like, no. Oh, no. And immediately my mom had me looking for Freeman Smith's obituary online. And for pretty much that entire first day, it wasn't there. But give it another day, it was, it had been very well known. And they were having a celebration of life on August 17th, which was last night. And that's where I went to. Freeman Smith's celebration of life at the Pleasant Valley Wine Company. Now, believe it or not, I had been to the Pleasant Valley Wine Company once before. Also for a very sad reason, and that was because my grandfather passed away back in January of 2020. Although it was January of 2020 when he died. We had his service and his celebration of life at the Pleasant Valley Wine Company around early February. In fact, believe it or not, the day before the funeral, when we had his calling hours, that was actually the day that Kobe Bryant died. Freaky, right? Needless to say, my 2020 was horrible before the world got turned upside down. And you know what? Come to think of it, that might have been the very last time I saw Freeman Smith alive. I'm just, my grandfather's funeral might have been the very last time I ever saw Freeman Smith alive. Can you believe that? But, I guess, it's no surprise that the pandemic screwed over everyone in more ways than one. So, yeah, I guess that's just how it was meant to be, I suppose. But Freeman Smith really was just the nicest guy ever. He was. My grandfather talked about him all the time. My family loved him. He was always, I liked him. He was just a really good guy, man. And, it was sad. And I'll never forget, around maybe 6:45, because the celebration of life started at 5. they were serving food like everywhere. I'll talk about the food in a second. And, it was like open bar. It was pretty much one of those type of deals where around, I think it was like 6:45 roughly. That's when, they had, speeches, prayers of the faithful, eulogies, I guess. And they were all so beautiful. I was very moved. And what really hit home for me was, at the celebration of life, there was a long row of like giant poster boards, and they were all pictures of Freeman Smith throughout his life. And no kidding, by my count, I found 7 photos of Freeman Smith with my grandfather. So naturally, I had to get photos of those photos and send them to my family. I was the only one from my family who could go. I mean, my mom's recovering from knee surgery. All of her other siblings are either in Colorado or Massachusetts, probably busy with their lives. My father was busy, doing his thing. Quite frankly, I had to go. Someone had to, for someone from my grandfather's family to not be there for Freeman Smith, I really don't think, seriously, I do not think my grandfather would have approved if I didn't go. Plus, I gotta admit, the food was amazing. Like, they were like waitresses passing out, like bacon wrapped scallops, miniature crab cake balls, mini quiches, bruschettas. Oh, the bruschettas were good. They were all good. Spoiler, everything I said was gonna be good. And there was like a big long table. There was an area dedicated to just cheese, an area dedicated to just meats. So this wouldn't technically be considered a charcuterie board. There was a giant veggie platter. There was an area dedicated to fruits. There was shrimp. Oh my God, the shrimp. With seriously, one of my favorite iterations of, shrimp served at a party, nothing new. But for me, the cocktail sauce has to be strong. It better be kicking my ass. And it did. Man, I love that. And that wasn't even that wasn't all they were serving either. They had, miniature barbecue meatballs. There was, artichoke dip, spinach artichoke dip with, cheesy spinach artichoke dip with either tortilla scoops or Tostito scoops or, little pieces of a toasted bread. There was, stuffed mushroom caps. There was, what else is there? I want to make sure I get everything right. I think that might have been it. I can't really think of anything else. Oh, and the main thing was there was a carving board, really good beef, and there was rolls that were cut in half. You can make sandwiches out of them. But there's regular rolls, but there are also salted caraway rolls. For those of you who don't know, an upstate New York specialty is called beef on wet, which is it's a roll that's covered in salt and caraway seeds, and you put beef on that. Oh, it was so good, and it came with both horsey sauce and horseradish. It was phenomenal. Seriously, Pleasant Valley Wine Company, they know how to throw a party, and they know how to give you good food. And I didn't even mention the open bar. They had a giant wine list of things. I tried their brut champagne, their brut rosé. I also tried their Catawba pink, which seriously, I really am more of a sweet guy. I'm a sweet boy, and man, I could have drank that wine the entire time, but I wouldn't have been able to drive home. Even with all the food I was eating. Oh man. It was really good. But I absolutely have to talk about when they were doing the eulogy and the prayers of the faithful and the speeches and stuff. The entire time that was going on, I was standing right next to the giant poster board that had the majority of photos of Freeman Smith and my grandfather. And it got me. Not to the point where I was crying, mind you, but it really hit deep. It did. So, and it was funny. I ran into several people who knew both Freeman Smith and my grandfather. And one guy who knew them both, I told him, you know what? My guess is when Freeman Smith, right now, Freeman Smith and my grandfather are up there in heaven having a good time. My grandfather is drinking Manhattan. My grandfather loved Manhattans. And then the guy I was talking to takes out his watch, like, you know, like that thing you do, like you do that and bring your watch out. Looks at his watch. He's like, second Manhattan. He'd be on a second Manhattan right now. You know, it's that sort of detail that other people would pay attention to that really make you realize just how much of an impact that some people can have on other people's lives. And there was another guy who I was talking to who mentioned how my grandfather was a great man. I mean, again, Freeman Smith and my grandfather were really close, so therefore, you know, they couldn't talk about how I knew Freeman Smith without talking about my grandfather. And the guy said that my grandfather was a great man. And what I told him is 100%, well, how I feel, by the way. If I live my life and even 1/10 as great as my grandfather was, I know I will have lived a good life. I mean, listen, the saying goes, greatness can only be imitated, never duplicated. Sure, maybe it is possible that I'll be great in my own way. But, you know, there is going to be no one who is as great as Freeman Smith. There is going to be no one who is as great as my grandfather was. You know, I'll be probably saying the same thing on that fateful day when, sadly, my father passes away. You know, as much as my father and I have had our disagreements over the years, you know, arguing and stuff like that, you know, I can't deny my father really is a great guy. And if I wind up being, you know, even half as good as my father, you know, I think I'll be okay. You know, not to get all personal or anything, but I really like how, because before I went to the celebration of life, I posted the outfit that I was wearing on Facebook. I had to get up to, because Pleasant Valley Wine Company is up at Hammondsport where Cuca Lake is, and I pretty much had to, you know, leave work, go to my family's cottage and get dressed there. And luckily my uncle's wife just happened to be there, so she took my photo. I really have to say thank you for like all your kind words and, you know, reactions to, you know, what I was wearing. Full disclosure, as much as I really am trying to be a little bit better about being body positive, and as much as I do relish the opportunity to, you know, dress up like that, I still never really feel that great about myself. So thanks for that. I really do appreciate it. Anyone who commented, that is. Actually, it was another point I was about to make. What was it? By the way, I'm thinking right now. I'm not getting emotional or anything. I'm just thinking. Because I really want to make sure I say everything I'm supposed to say, you know? Don't want to forget something later. Man, what was it? There was a really good point I was about to make, and then I immediately thought about, the outfit I was wearing. Right. I know what it was. I was thinking it over the other day regarding everything that's happened in the last few weeks, the event, the celebration of life I went to last night, my heartbreak coming full circle almost 3 weeks ago now. Actually, is it almost 3 weeks? Yeah, it is almost 3 weeks, holy cow. The first time I did karaoke, and how day by day emotionally I'm getting a little better. And how some of you over the last few weeks have said that, I'm a good guy and stuff like that. And I really do appreciate it. Some people even said I'm a great guy, which I really appreciate. More than you ever know. But, the saying goes, behind every great man, there is an even greater woman by his side. And I'm currently single right now. So I really wouldn't know if I consider myself great yet, but thank you. But with that said, I think I'm determined more than ever to do something I've wanted to do literally for months. If you've been watching me long enough, you guys know what it is by now. For the rest of you, let's just say it's something that, regardless of the outcome, I will still say that 2023 has been a very great year. It's just going to be made all the greater if this thing I want to do winds up being successful. And full disclosure, this thing I want to do, I'm 100% sure it will not end successfully. I really am sure. But considering everything I've been through, especially in the last couple of weeks, I owe it to myself to try. Plus, for once I'd like to be proven wrong about what I just said a second ago. How I don't think this thing's going to work out. Because the more I think about how it won't be successful, I think about what will happen if I am successful even more. So that's got to be a step in the right direction if there ever was one. I hope you liked this video. If you did, like and subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow me on social media. As always, I am very humbled that I made this video for all of you guys who watch and enjoy for today. I'm hoping you have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful... I forgot to do Happy Friday. Happy Friday, everyone. But I hope we all have a wonderful Friday. And remember, if any of you guys want to talk, the channel is going to be here to lend me. I'll be back. Take care and make good choices. 607 all day, baby.